I only do them every couple of months, and so then my brain is like,
oh no, I mean, I would just, this is not the sort of thing I'm good at.
Oh, also, Ellie, I just entirely stole your PowerPoint from your. So.
It's not stealing.
Well, yeah. Just say thank you so much for making a template that I was able to quickly put my information into.
You tell Virginia every day that I steal all her work.
It's so helpful when someone else has done something first. I cannot tell you how helpful it is to not have to do it from scratch.
Okay, I'll be back. I'll double check when I get back for your questions.
Okay. As soon as this uploads, boom.
Yeah, don't stress. I mean,
I'm ready.
Okay, CSO awards. Can you prioritize that?
I already talked to Ryan this morning.
Okay, great. And you saw the email from Andrew and forwarded to you were CC'd on it.
From Andrew?
Andrew Kim, counsel, where he goes through.
I saw Cindy's, but I have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
I went over, and it does look like Scott set all of these out, so I slightly they were
helpful.
I mean, I had information I would not have otherwise had.
Yeah.
So I checked in about the one Cindy was checking in on, but I don't actually. Yeah, I'll check in about what Andrew thinks. Yeah, this is the corner of. Yeah, sorry.
You don't know what we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's make sure we talk. Let's say Tuesday.
We have a one-on-one tomorrow.
Okay,
but also I'm available this afternoon. I don't know if you are, but
I have a bunch of meetings. I should be back by 4. Let's put that at the first thing that we talk about tomorrow. Let's go through the process and just so that you,
Yeah, for the LOAs, is that what we're calling them? I'm just been managing that they're happening. So for those,
that's totally fine.
I'm sure I will figure it out, and I now have all the things here, but now I'll have to actually do them.
I'm not super concerned. There's a whole bunch of new ones from the last omnibus, not a million. Yeah. They need to be processed. We need to just check with Ryan whether they need to be processed by the end of this year or whether they can go into January. Process is not a big deal because some of the organizations don't get the stuff back to us, and then if they don't get it back to us, then it's sort of
And for some of them, that folks are checking in, I'm just also pick up the phone. For to say something to see if I can actually speed it along. But
that'd be great. The ones that I would say top, and then we'll just talk about this too. But Cindy, they're done. So she's trying to
wrap everything up.
Yeah.
So that's what I checked in with Ryan about this morning.
Awesome. Would you please put India on your panels?
Oh, of course.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. In fact, I also was hoping to do that.
Okay, awesome. And I was like, I was
actually going to ask you if that.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
I would love that.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I need to actually set my panel. I was trying to think about how to have the a diversity of folks, and so in some ways it would be helpful to have Allie, and I don't know if it's too.
But whoever you think will help you hire, who you want to hire.
Okay.
And I'm gonna talk to India and operating by proxy basically, and I think she'll be fantastic. So
yeah, I have
on her own too. So
some ideas.
Yeah, and don't. I mean, 2 to 3 people in order to just get the job done.
Yeah, I think I have some ideas. There are 2 people who are applying who, if no one else applied, I think would be amazing. And I'm hoping if there's other people who are
awesome. The other people piece, the person that works for Kristen, capital person that works for Jackie.
Sure.
Here. Okay.
Yeah.
No, she just started. She said that one of her friends from Snohomish County maybe applied. Her name is Stephanie, but I think her background is actually older stuff.
I feel very open to, honestly, at this point of if somebody could step in and manage the immigrant refugee, the SC6 stuff.
This would not be that person.
But whoever could would be very high at that second. I think one of my folks I know is applying could do that well. I'm so excited. I can't wait. There's a person who's leaving another position who I know professionally who's going to apply, and I think I trust him.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's do you trust the gut of raise things up if they need to be, or just handle it?
Plus also he's a dude who I trust, which I think is helpful to have.
Yeah, God, right?
But I just think it's helpful to have that a diversity of.
In our human services department here has a lot of ladies.
Yeah, exactly. So having that. Anyway.
Yeah, and I have touch base with her. Just wanted to let you know before I sent that. Everyone's feelings about that. Fair. It's your part as a human and then your reality as a person that is working. I mean, she knows she was carrying all the things. So, okay, and then Carmen She works for EDR. She quit at the county. I gave her a heads up that you're not opening. This is not at all me saying hire. There are actually some very strong cons because there's some. I don't know if you could necessarily trust her to keep her cool. Lots of experience, I think, and a really interesting background. So that's sort of the. I don't know that she will, but I told her she should reach out because you're the hiring manager.
Yeah, I feel very open to, there's a person I heard that on. I feel very open.
Okay. New beginnings. You saw the email chain. Can you just check with Jim again?
Oh yeah, that was yeah.
Yeah.
I saw that he was said okay, and then I didn't see any kind of it happened.
Yeah.
It's possible.
No, I think he did say it did, but it's not done. So I'm like.
Okay. Oh, maybe I don't know if I was copied on. The last thing I saw was you checking in with him and him saying, "Yes, I will go follow up because this 24 hours ago," and then I didn't see anything after that.
Okay.
So if there was any
I think
other-
he did follow up, but he needs to follow up again.
I guess I'll check.
I am pulling Allie into our our management level strategic direction setting meeting this afternoon to talk about the 501 comments kind of timeline and where she is so far. But it's mostly to get feedback for the department-wide thing. So we're holding it until Miranda gets here, just a heads up. And then India sent an email to IT trying to get Scott's email dump. We don't have it yet. I will resurface that.
In theory, I mean, I have the list for his CSO contract, so
the problem is the Q&As, we don't know. So we need to get that. So just work with Angie to do the amendment to the RFP so people don't start freaking out about the fact that they haven't had answers to their questions. It's not an immediate, but it's ideally in the next
I will
week.
go into and see who's opened up applications at the very least. We can start redirecting them.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah, for now. Or I'm happy to answer the FAQs if you send them to me. That's not a big deal at all. But it's just the fact that they may be sitting there.
Okay.
With a closing date coming up. Okay.
Did we get with Scott's computer has he responded to any of those
HR? No, he hasn't.
Questions about wrapping things up?
He is technically on KCFMLA until the 10th.
Until today.
Which is
today.
Yeah.
So this is technically supposed to be his last day, which is why I was.
Yay. Let me circle around and see what happens when an employee doesn't actually turn in their county property. We can't figure out if he went somewhere else in the county, but the computers are DCHS specific.
Allie, he's gonna go do animation stuff for Amazon.
Oh, fucking awesome!
Exactly.
Great.
This is God bless Allie for having human relationships with people, but she knows everything. Yeah.
This is the happiest thing I've ever heard about. He's an amazing.
He's gonna go help start some kind of animation project.
Are you kidding? Oh my god!
I know.
So
That's
happy.
so great. That's such a great thing. Exactly.
Any degree. People to watch him.
Yeah.
That makes me so
much a better life for him.
Happy.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, that's what Ellie said.
Because I've been so I mean, from a human point of view, stressed out.
A lot of money.
Oh, that's so awesome. I mean, if you go just set that and drive it
People have
in
all
the
their
painful
things.
things, but that is awesome.
Yeah, and his wife works for the county, so.
Oh, good. I feel so much better. I've been really.
I know, because you don't
worried.
want the. Yeah,
No,
absolutely.
no,
You want
I
people to be well and pay their bills. And,
The reason the runway has been so long.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's okay. That's great. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
everything's
Thank
great.
you.
Oh, that's great for everyone.
That's great. And I mean, he's really awesome at that. Really awesome. So
I
yeah,
want people to do things they're awesome at and enjoy.
and enjoy.
Yeah.
Oh, that is.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So yeah, I think that's my, or at least the most
Okay.
urgent whatever.
So let me try to figure out what we do in the event of that. I mean, we said close of business, but
and we
I mean, he has
There's
to
probably
turn
a lot
his
of-
computer and his badge.
there's probably a lot of things we're loading into tomorrow's meeting. I can try to triage a little bit, but the short version to the mid email you sent me is hell yes, let's just talk about details.
Okay.
That is very compelling, interesting.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I want to, and that's what I said to you. I'm not if we're going to be working for them.
Yeah,
But
if
yes,
we can bring those in
we-
alignment and it's no secret that both Ellie and I probably wanted to be here is making food and making all the TV money well coordinated and aligned, and so more of that to do. I feel pretty confident in our ability to I don't necessarily just want to process contracts, but if we can do things to help those be kind of an alignment of any TV
And it'll be
alignment
whatever
across
it is
the
they're
division.
doing under the mid, but I think we could align them in a Yeah, absolutely.
And,
I mean, it was
adjustments at the
clear to
next
me in
biennial.
that meeting that they were like, we seasoned your staff because that's who we trust as contract managers, and it was weird because we got in there and we're like, wait, you're not talking about us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, there were. I know, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
Was up to that go well?
It went really well. That's great. I mean, it was very much that, and I mean, they had like concerns about the amount of data requirements, but we could answer a lot of those. You know, they're like, why do you need discharge status information? You know, that's really embarrassing. And we're like, well, because we need to be able to justify a flexible funding source that can fund people who have less than honorable discharge, like services for them, because of federal, you can't do that.
Did Mary Ellen ask that question?
No, the woman from New Beginnings.
Susan.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, and it's totally, I mean, it's a hard question to ask, but it was like, you know, this is actually the other way around. It's actually so that we can get data, like this is a need that we have.
I'm honestly impressed she's tracking at that level of detail.
Well, what was really interesting is that apparently all of their staff had participated in the like other core meetings, and a lot of their staff had been like, yes, we do want to know this data, yes, we do, and then they were basically like, no one surfaced it to us, and we had these broader policy concerns, so they were very much like, so our bad, but. And then Mary Ellen made a plug for like, she's like, this is going to cost us $10,000. I was like, when you renegotiate your contract with your or whatever, put in the costs. Like VSHSL or the general fund can fund like evaluation costs on your end. We don't have a problem with that. And then I slid in there.
I know right there.
The fact that we were going to be aligning the general fund contracts.
That's great.
Yeah.
Which honestly weirdly doesn't actually serve the people in that room, but actually it serves the beginnings.
Well, no, but very much I was like, you know, what we have is the more sophisticated contractors, Jurkovich, have done a really good job doing little for a lot of money. And
Although
the
it
reverse
New
is.
Beginnings has one of the worst contracts I've ever seen.
Well, and that's what I was like.
They're serving hundreds of people
some
for
of,
$30,000.
right, and I was like, and then some of you are doing a ton for way less money. So what we want is some equity in that.
Yeah.
Cool. So anyway, it went really well.
Yay, awesome. I'll triage for our meeting tomorrow to like.
Okay,
Make
and
sure
then
we're-
and make sure that we go over like how to process those. It's not complicated. It's just I had to do the same. Like, through this.
I thought I heard Allie.
Thank you, Scarlett.
I think so too, and I hear Scarlett, and I hear Shannon. Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
I am just going to start our recording and we'll go ahead and get started.
Right.
I think it might just be you and I, Meryl, but I will.
Dan's here too.
Okay, wonderful. So, hello. This is the Bidders Conference for the Countywide Gender-Based Violence Prevention Pilot Facilitator Request for Qualifications. As hopefully everyone got okay, great. It seems to be recording. Apologies for my just quick technical moment. Okay, great. This conversation is being recorded and will be posted to the Veteran Seniors and Human Services levy page, which there is a link to at the end for anyone that wants to come back and review the questions and discussion. My name is Shannon Perez Darby, and I manage the Vulnerable Populations team here at the King County Department of Community and Human Services Adult Services Division. And if folks who are there could do it here on the call, quick introductions of just your name and any affiliations.
Hi, this
Hi,
is Meryl.
my name.
Go ahead.
Oh, go for it.
Hi, this is Meryl Cousin from the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence.
Hello.
And my coworker, Dan Alcantara Thompson, is also here.
Wonderful.
Hi.
Hello.
And I am Betsy Archambault.
Oh, hi, Betsy.
Hey, Meryl.
Wonderful. Well, welcome everybody. Just a quick overview, particularly because there's only a couple of folks on the call with us. It should be relatively, I'm going to move through the kind of overview pretty quickly, and then we will get to any questions that you have. So are folks just on the call, or are there folks who can folks see the slides as well?
Oh, all I saw was a conference call number, but I can pull up the slides really quickly.
Yeah, that's okay. I can also, when this is posted, it will have the slides, and I'm happy to email them to folks as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm also only on the phone.
Okay, great. That's helpful to know. I will just read off the general slide information, and I can send it to folks. It's stuff that's almost exclusively in the RFP, so there isn't new things there, and I'll make sure to send it out to folks. So
Okay,
today I'm just going to do a very high overview of the Veteran Seniors and Human Services Levy. We'll be talking about this strategy specifically, and then talking about the RFQ, how to apply, and then answering any questions you all might have. So the Veteran Seniors and Human Services Levy was passed by King County voters in 2017. It is a 6-year property tax levy that started in January 2018 and runs through December 2023. Because it's a property tax levy, it's an estimated value of how much it will be collecting annually, but it's projected to be between $55 and $65 million annually. And this levy replaces the former Veterans and Human Services Levy. And our kind of guiding document with the Veterans, Seniors, and Human Services Levy, which you also will hear me to refer as VSHSL, is the implementation plan that was passed in 2018. And the implementation plan has not only a lot of nuanced information about policy, but also has guidance for each strategy under the levy. There is over 72 that helps guide us on kind of what we need to do, what's important and required portions of stewarding this money and getting it out. There are 3 populations across the Veteran, Seniors, and Human Services Levy. Veteran seniors and this category of vulnerable populations, which is a pretty big umbrella category, thinking about focusing on marginalized communities and the intersections of a number of different communities. There are also 5 results areas across these 3 populations. Those are housing stability, financial stability, social engagement, healthy living, and systems access and improvement. This strategy is the Healthy Living Strategy 3A. And, you know, I will do the kind of easiest summary of it, but what our implementation says is taking place in 2 phases. This program will fund an entity or entities to envision, plan, and execute a countywide initiative to prevent domestic violence, sexual assault, commercial sexual exploitation, and other forms of gender-based violence. So the vision behind this strategy is that it happens in 2 phases. Phase 1 is planning and facilitation phase, and the intention there is to hire and to award an entity to facilitate the planning portion of this strategy. The facilitator will steward phase 1 and support a unified effort from King County's network of both domestic and sexual violence providers, as well as folks working with young people in King County to develop in-depth, multi-level, coordinated prevention and community engagement strategies tailored to geographically and culturally diverse communities across King County. And then phase 2, which is less specific, is the execution of the prevention pilot. And that phase will be informed by the work that happens in phase 1 of the pilot. The intention is that the pilot will be a 3-year pilot that runs from January 2021 through December 2023. So the scope of work for this RFQ, this request for qualifications, is the intention is to hire an entity to facilitate the planning phase. And so that entity will report to and work closely with King County DCHS staff, develop a work plan for the outlined scope of work, provide general oversight for the community planning process, including to plan, coordinate, and conduct ongoing community engagement opportunities. The entity will work in close partnership with gender-based violence providers, survivors, community members, young people, and work to receive meaningful input from youth and young adults who may both engage with and benefit from the work of the funded prevention projects. It will support strategies that lead to long-term investments in communities, organizations, and individuals to promote agency, safety, and well-being in order to prevent gender-based violence. It will work to continue to evaluate the effectiveness of the planning process. It will work to help identify next steps for the second phase, which is the implementation of the pilot itself. And really is the kind of entity that will be helping both co-create what the planning will actually look like, and the engagement for this engagement work, as well as help to synthesize what we learn over the next 9 months to a year, to help inform what will eventually be a request for proposals for the pilot itself. The total funding is up to $100,000 for the program period of January 1, really January 2020 to December 31st. And as with all procurements with DCHS, those dates are subject to change. As far as eligibility for applicants, we ask that there be at least 3 years of experience working in the field of gender-based violence, a strong background in partnering with community-based agencies and entities supporting culturally specific services or programming, demonstrated background and experience in the principles of equity and social justice, excellent written communication skills, strong group facilitation skills, and demonstrated experience developing work plans in collaboration with a diverse array of stakeholders. Our preferred qualifications also include experience working with youth or young adults, experience with the development and implementation of programs supporting the leadership of youth and young adults, and desire to continually broaden expertise in the area of gender-based violence prevention in order to serve as a resource for the community. I want to say a quick piece about, and I'll open it up in a moment for more questions, but about the kind of some of the things that we heard from our community planning sessions that we did. So in the spring and summer of 2019, we held 2 different community planning sessions in different parts of the county to hear from stakeholders, so providers, community members, survivors, about what this should look like and to help inform our process moving forward. And we heard a number of things in those community planning sessions, but one of the things we really heard was the importance of balancing meaningful and deep input from folks who've been long doing work in the fields of gender-based violence, and to make sure that those providers and community members are meaningfully and deeply a part of the process, as well as really thinking about the intersections of youth and young adults and the folks who do that work, and being able to hear from young people in the work of prevention. And so there were a number of folks who work with young people who really impressed on us the importance of meaningfully hearing from young people as we move forward. And so, you know, one of the dynamics of this field is that there are absolutely many folks who are doing works at the intersections of gender-based violence and supporting young people, and those are 2 fields that often work kind of in like parallel to each other, and are not as deeply integrated as maybe some would like. And so we're really hoping to hit and think of creative ways to make sure we're meaningfully hearing from folks doing work around gender-based violence, as well as young people who may benefit from the pilots and also have really important things to share. So as far as the application, we're asking for folks for resumes of relevant staff, and if you are applying as part of an organization, a short history and summary of the lead agency. I also want to say that the resume submitted can be in addition to the 5-page maximum, and so folks are available to submit resumes in addition to that 5-page limit. We're asking for a summary of subject matter expertise, a summary of experience supporting culturally specific services, a summary of experience conducting community engagement activities, a general cost proposal, and a list of 3 references with their contact information. I imagine there may be questions about the cost proposal. If not, I'm happy to speak to that more. We ask that applications be submitted by email to me. The email is in the RFP or RFQ, but it is sperezd, SPEREZD, as in dog, at kingcounty.gov. And we ask that folks submit a clear, concise response, no more than 5 pages long, again, excluding the resumes in that page limit, using 12-point font and a single space with 1-inch margins. And the applications are due by email no later than 5 p.m. on Friday, January 3rd. Oh, my thing has an error, 2020. For the review criteria pretty exclusively matches up with the things we're asking for. So we'll be reviewing based on resume and background, information you share about subject matter expertise, information you share about equity and social justice, experience around facilitation and work plan development, your cost proposal, and that resumes were submitted. At this time, we don't anticipate doing interviews with applicants, but we are making the spaciousness and the option to do so if we find that necessary. So there's additional points if we do decide to move forward with interviews, which again is not the current intention, but we reserve the right to do that if that is helpful in ultimately making a final award. The process for deciding who is awarded this funding, there will be a review panel. Review panels can consist of King County staff, external subject matter experts, evaluators, members of the Veteran Seniors and Human Services Levy Advisory Board, broader community members, and members or designees of King County Council staff, and folks from King County Council staff who sit on panels serve as non-voting members. Timeline. So the RFQ was released on December 2nd. The Bidders Conference is today, December 10th. Final questions to be submitted in writing are due by December 23rd, and proposals are due January 3rd. And it is our intention to move as quickly as the process allows for to be making awards. So in our dream scenario, we will be awarding pretty quickly and hope to make announcements in January. If for whatever reason that's not possible, it will be as soon, no later than February, that we intend to be making announcements about and make an award. And we will be dating contracts to the month that we make the award. That's my broad spiel. I want to open it up to questions that you all might have.
Hi, this is Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
And my big question is, I am no longer affiliated with a formal domestic violence or sexual assault agency, but am doing private consulting. And so would I still be eligible to apply as a consultant?
Yes, it is open to individual consultants as well as organizations. So you don't have to be a 501c3 to apply.
All right, perfect. And how detailed do you want your cost proposal to be?
Thank you for asking. So part of the reason we didn't include more specific information about cost proposals is that we anticipate that the cost proposal will be largely determined by kind of what is your model that you're proposing around the engagement and around the planning. And so we are aware that there's a number of different ways to go about this, and we wanted to provide the flexibility for the experts, which are you all and the folks applying, and whoever is eventually awarded, to be able to design a model that was in service with their work and their vision and their expertise. So we do not need it to be highly detailed. A very broad overview. It doesn't need to be down to the penny, and we won't. We will be discussing that with the awardee when we contract. We'll be discussing a more finalized budget. So this is intended to be sort of your proposal of like, in general, this is how much staff time it's going to cost. This is how much, we're going to, if we want to do planning sessions with young people that where we need to be, providing meaningful support to those young people in order to hear from them. This is how much that's going to cost. There are no additional, this up to $100,000 is the all-in budget for the planning. So it is intended to pay not only for the staff time to do the work, but additional things as in if there is food that's necessary for the community planning sessions, if there are for the engagement opportunities, if there are other kinds of meeting expenses that's intended to be part of this $100,000. So that it will be very much based on your proposal and how you are kind of intending to go about the planning, but a very broad level is more than appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Other questions?
I have a list of questions if you're
Great.
done, Betsy. I'm trying to think of the expected order. So there are, this is going to result in a list of a plan for what is going to be limited funds. And so we're going to, I anticipate we're going to hear a lot of things that people are doing and would like to do and would like to see funded. And they're not all going to be able to make it into the final plan. And so at some point there's going to need to be a process of prioritization. And, usually a facilitator is not the one who's making those decisions. Whatever entity that they're working with is responsible for making those decisions. And my question is, who makes those final decisions? Because you're talking about broad input from dozens of providers as well as, survivors, community members, and youth. And so, I think I understand the process of doing a needs assessment or community input process, but then who ultimately decides what goes into the final plan?
Thank you for asking that. Is it okay if I respond to each of your questions as you ask them, and then we can keep going down the list?
Yes.
Great. So ultimately, the Department of Community and Human Services makes the final decisions about what will end up in the ultimate request for proposals for the phase 2 money for the pilot. And so this is really intended to help inform DCHS about the many intersections and nuances that go into this kind of work. And then, and ultimately that decision making will be DCHS, and sort of our final decision maker is Leo Flor, our director. And so, so ultimately DCHS. Our vision is that really this will help to inform us about the many nuances that there are, like all those things you were speaking to, Meryl, about how do you actually prioritize, especially a diverse array of stakeholders. And so our hope is to be able to, that in kind of collaboration, the facilitator would help to provide context and help to kind of flesh out those nuances to help us in our decision making about how do we prioritize, and there are some moments that decisions will be made, and this is hopefully to help inform that. Next question, or if there's any follow-up questions about that.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about follow-up. So, So what do you see as the deliverables for this?
We will talk about those more specifically in contracting, but functionally the deliverable is the organizing of the engagement opportunities, and then a report, for lack of a better word, but a written way that synthesizes what was heard and sort of recommendations to our department. So the actual kind of engagement sessions themselves, and then either one or several ways that is synthesized and shared back with DCHS.
Okay. Okay. So you already conducted those listening sessions, and so what are you hoping to get from this that you didn't get from those listening sessions?
I think one of the big things we were not able to do in those listening sessions was those sessions were largely attended by providers, not exclusively. And so I think a wider range than we had the capacity to do, as well as there were many questions that were brought up that warranted much more conversation. So, for example, I guess I'll say in two parts. So the first part is we have not done right at this moment by the ask to meaningfully hear from young people. And so that will definitely be an important part moving forward, is making sure that we also have an opportunity to meaningfully hear from young people about this work. And then there were many questions when we talk about gender-based violence prevention. That is such an enormous umbrella. So we heard folks share around, economic justice, gender-based violence prevention, to very specific, primary, secondary, tertiary prevention strategies, school-based programs that were very specific with curriculum, and that is an extremely wide range. And so we're hoping to solicit more feedback about how broad should we be thinking in phase 2. And so we know those are big questions that deserve more time to kind of meaningfully speak on. So I think that for us, the level of engagement we have done did not get to the kind of nuance that would be necessary to think about. And honestly, this is both a lot of money and not that much money when we think about the broad range of prevention. And so there are some real questions about the guiding principle for the Veteran Seniors and Human Services Levy, among many, is this question of what can only VSHSL do. And so we want to be thinking about not only what should happen in the broad world of prevention, but specifically how should this money be well spent and well thought of throughout King County. So how can this specific pot of money be best in service of the other prevention work that's happening, meaningfully working with folks across the county? That is a really big question that I think there's still more work to be done about how we are thinking geographically. And so those are some of the areas of just from what we heard from community planning sessions that we need to get more up in the details around.
And so again, just to be clear about the timeline, so the deliverable of having this report / recommendations is due by December 31st. And then the department will do an RFP process?
Yeah, we'll sit down and talk specific deadlines, but our intention is to have something closer to by September or potentially earlier. There's probably 9 months of actually the planning work, because it is our intention to have an entity awarded to be able to start doing work by, or I guess an entity or however many. That's one of the other questions too, is, do you do one big project? Do you do 3 small projects? Do you do like those kinds of things? But is to have the contracts awarded so that people in phase 2 can start their work January 1 or 2021. So we will need time to do a procurement ahead of that, in which we would love advisement from this entity on. So realistically, it's probably closer to 9 months of actually the kind of planning work with some additional support as we are awarding.
If it was to be an entity and not an individual to go for this, and it would involve potentially some subcontracting, not just because for 9 months it may not be a staff position doing all of this work, and it might actually be multiple people. Would people, or could there be subcontracts with organizations that might then apply for funding?
Yes. So we understand that it is a small interconnected world in both gender-based violence world as well as youth serving folks, and that we are trying to think about how to navigate potential conflicts of interest, knowing that we hope that whoever is awarded has had a role in informing the process, as any kind of stakeholder process should be heard from a number of different folks. So we can talk more about like up in the details of whoever is ultimately awarded. But yes, the short version of that is that if whoever was awarded was an organization that wanted to do subcontracts with other entities, and those entities were later going to apply, we understand there are many different intersections and would want to make space for that.
Okay. I think that was my question. I have just a couple of specific things. Can you tell me what this phrase means? Support strategies that will, on page 5 of the RFP, support strategies that will lead to long-term investments in communities, organizations, and individuals.
Yeah, our intention is to say that I think we're thinking more largely about the levy and thinking about always how does any one strategy in the levy work in combination with the rest, and our intention and hope is that the levy will be renewed in the future, and so the really vision behind that is we want to make sure that this work is is being informed and is thinking about the long scale vision of this work. So it's not meant to be kind of coded in any other way except to say we understand this is one moment as part of what we hope is a long history of gender-based violence prevention funding that comes from the county.
Okay. And so just to be just a couple more questions sort of about the timeline and beyond year 1. So ideally some kind of report and recommendations would be to the department by sometime in September so that you could then do a procurement process. And then there would still be you would still like for the entity or individual to stay involved in advising or working with DCHS beyond the time that report is submitted, but the whole contract would be done December 31st. Because I'm just including documenting findings and progress of programs and activities in written reports to King County. This is also the bottom of page 5. I wasn't clear what in the second phase. Like, it sounds like the second phase isn't really going to happen until after December 31st, and the contract is up at then.
Yeah, and apologies for any lack of clarity there. It's really yes, the work that we are asking Centity to do is essentially to inform us up to the point of the procurement, and we don't have an anticipated role for this entity like as part of this funding in phase 2. And so essentially the date is to say up to December 2020. If the work is completed before then, that's not a problem. So the bulk of this work will be significantly before then, and it's really to allow flexibility in the contract so that if things go late, there's a snowpocalypse, there's whatever, and many things that can happen. It's intended to allow flexibility, but we really intend that the work that will happen more in the first half of the year than the second.
Okay. And again, I'm trying. Sorry if I'm being nitpicky, but then let me find. There was something about like monitoring the effectiveness of the planning process. That's just basically.
Yeah, basically checking in throughout, and that like if we have worked together on some strategy, we're 3 months in and no one's showing up and we're not hearing what we need to hear, we might need to try some different things. So it's just meant to say that we are kind of checking in about, is this working throughout the life of the project. Okay.
And then the phase 3 of the prevention pilot, so there's going to be 3 years of implementation starting in 2021, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. Okay, that's the end of my questions.
It's okay, you can have as many questions as you want. Uh-huh.
I had one, Shannon. This is Deanne. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit to, it sounds like in the RFQ, you're really trying to balance like the expertise that gender-based violence programs have had over the years and trying to do this work. But I'm also hearing like some, I don't know if I would describe it as like a tension or a conflict. I think it's something that I've definitely noticed of like gender-based violence orgs not necessarily always like not having like the youth programs. Like I noticed that in the RFQ there's a specific thing about talking about youth programs as separate from gender-based violence programs, and I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about like how, like do you imagine those being like separate, potentially like focus groups or things like that, or do you, and how do you also weight then like programs or communities of color? I mean, I imagine that it would be up to the entity to decide a lot of these things, but I guess I just was curious if from your perspective as best you can tell, if you could speak to some of the ways that you're thinking about marginalized communities and prioritization. Sorry, that was kind of vague, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, unfortunately, I'm happy to speak to a little bit more about the kind of hearing from young people and youth leadership portion. Unfortunately, the second question, or the answer to the second question is, we actually are asking folks to tell us that, so King County does have a number of guiding values and principles around thinking about equity and social justice and leading with race and centering communities of color in the work that we do. And so that information around that is sprinkled throughout the request for qualifications, and it's absolutely a lens, and including that we are scoring on, that folks are telling us how you are working with and centering marginalized communities, and particularly communities of color. And sort of we're asking folks to tell us, what is your vision for that and that work? And part of the reason why I'm happy to provide as much kind of clarity about what we understand and where we're going. But we also really want to, we don't want to pretend that DCHS are the experts on these issues, and so we are really asking applicants to tell us about your vision and about the communities you would like to prioritize, or thinking some about like, tell us about what your vision is. And I will say, around the kind of intersection around gender-based violence work and young people, there are many organizations and programs that are absolutely doing work at those intersections. And there's some real gaps and areas for growth, both in the youth serving world and in the gender-based violence world, to each speak and meaningfully engage with the other and with kind of those intersections of young people experiencing violence. And it is essential for us that young people have that young people's leadership is a part of this work. And we do have some flexibility if there is an applicant who says, that's just not my area of expertise. We would like to talk with them about that, and it may be that we think about other creative ways to do that. So I guess I say as much as I don't want to say, hey, here's the exact plan, because I want flexibility for applicants to tell us what their vision is. And if there is an applicant who is not able to meaningfully do the work around young people, there are many options, including that we decide to hold back a portion of the money in order to do meaningful youth work if we receive an application from an entity who is not able to do that. The award amount is up to $100,000, and it's our intention to award, to make that full award. But those are some of the ways in which we could be flexible, which is why some of the youth engagement work is part of a preferred qualification and not part of the required qualifications. Understanding that in our dream world, there are entities that apply who can be doing meaningful work at the intersections around gender-based violence and young people.
And so again, when you say you want the applicants to talk about their vision, you mean their vision for the planning process, not for the actual plan.
Exactly, yes. Like how you would go about a planning process in order to meaningfully hear from a diverse array of stakeholders, both culturally and geographically, and at the intersections of gender-based violence and youth work.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have any more questions right now. Thank you very much. This is it's been really interesting, very informative.
Wonderful. So if there are any other questions, folks are welcome to submit questions in writing to me, S. Perez D, SPEREZ D as in dog at kingcounty.gov. And we're accepting questions in writing up till December 23rd. The response to those questions will be posted at kingcounty.gov/VSHSL-funding. And that is the King County's VSHSL site. It's on everything, including the that website is as well in the RFQ itself. And so we'll be posting this recording as well as written responses to written questions at that site. And so folks are welcome to submit any other questions in writing if you kind of got off this or are listening to this afterwards and have additional questions. And I really appreciate everyone taking the time today, and we look forward to receiving everyone's applications.
All right. Thank you so much, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.